Hey guys, welcome to the first video of Learning AP. Today we'll be discussing some of the introductory terms of AP Statistics. And today will be a fairly short video, but if you have any questions or anything that I missed, please leave that down below in the comment section and I will get to that as soon as I can. Okay, so the first term that you typically hear about in AP Statistics is an individual. Now, an individual refers to the single units of a population that is observed in an experiment or observational study. So the individual, think of it as the simplest term in any experimental design or observational study. Now, an experiment is actually different than an observational study, and we'll get into that in a sec. But an individual, consider it once again, the single units. Now, a subject is just another term to describe an individual. It just means that the individual is a person. So if I'm studying dogs in an experiment, those would not be considered subjects. They would just be considered individuals. But if I'm studying 25 women, then those will be referred to as subjects. It's the same term, just to describe that they're humans. So now the next term we're going to go into is the explanatory and response variables. Now the explanatory variable here, it basically means it's the variable that you are manipulating to find a certain outcome. The explanatory variable attempts to explain the observed outcome of a study or an experiment. The explanatory variables are also known as the independent or X variables, and they basically manipulate it. So if I wanted to find the effects of fertilizer on plant growth, my independent variable would be the fertilizer, because that is what I'm changing in order to observe the outcome. Now the response variable, on the other hand, is also known as the dependent or Y variable, and it would measure the growth of a plant in centimeters, millimeters, feet, whatever. Okay, so now the next term we have is an observational study. Now this term came up back when we were talking about individuals, and these two are actually very different. So let's start off with an example. If I was going to a hospital to observe the effect of different cancer treatments on survival rate in 25 women, I would be observing them. If I'm not the one that's assigning them to the treatment, if I'm not the one that's saying, you people have to get chemotherapy, you people have to have a mastectomy, then it is an observational study. Okay, so an observational study, the best way to define it is that the researcher does not deliberately impose treatment. Okay, I am not the one assigning the type of cancer treatment to the woman. The experiment, on the other hand, basically, they do deliberately impose some of the treatment. So if I do tell them, like, you 25 need to go get a chemotherapy and you get this, and the same thing works for the planning. Welcome to the first video of Learning AP. Today we'll be talking about some of the introductory terms used in AP Statistics. And it's important that you guys know that this video series is not just for AP classes. If there are any suggested videos or any other content that you want me to go over, please leave a comment down below. Now today's video will be fairly short because we're just going over some of the fundamental terms that are used in the course, but there will be follow-up videos, so if there's anything that I missed or anything you want me to go over, please leave a comment down below and I will get to them as soon as I can. Okay, so let's get started. Now an individual is probably the first word, or term, I should say, that you will hear in AP Statistics. An individual can be defined as a single unit of a population that is observed in an experiment or observational study. Now, an experiment is very different than an observational study, and we will get to that in a second. But think of an individual as the smallest unit of a population. And I'll get to what a population is in a sec too. So now a subject is a term that's used to mean that the individual is a person. Okay, so if you're studying dogs, the dogs would just be considered the individual. They would not be considered subjects. Okay, if that makes sense. The subject is only used to refer to humans as the individual. So now going into experimental design, the explanatory variable, that is the independent variable or the X variable. It's referred to in both ways. But what the explanatory variable does is that it attempts to explain the observed outcome of a study or experiment. Okay, so these are typically what you manipulate in any type of study, and these pretty much try to explain what you're seeing and why you're seeing it. Now, the exact opposite of this is called the response variable. And the response variable is known as the dependent or the Y variable. Excuse my spelling. Okay, and the dependent variable, it measures. That's the difference. It measures the observed outcome of an observational study or experiment. For example, if I'm measuring the effect of fertilizer on plant growth, my response variable would be the amount of plant growth in centimeters, inches, feet, whatever it is. The explanatory variable, on the other hand, would be the type of fertilizer. Okay, so I'm changing the type of fertilizer, but I am measuring how much it grows. So that's the difference between explanatory and response variables. So now we're going into what an observational study is. An observational study is when you observe the individuals and different explanatory variables without attempting to influence them. For example, if I want to know which type of breast cancer treatment works best on a group of 20